Hi, this is Jon Burcaw, and I'm reading my book, The Sidecar Kings. Today, chapters 14, 15, and 16. And like most chapters, this one begins with a picture. Actually, a picture of the vehicle I'm sitting in right now. Kind of tough to tell here, a little grainy, but that's on purpose. The nose of this thing actually tips forward, kind of like a cockpit on a jet plane. Perhaps you remember me talking about that earlier. Makes it real easy to get kids in and out of this thing in a hurry. Because when you're at camp, there's a lot of kids that want rides. Works out really well that way. Chapter 14. The 7 sidecar rigs parked in a row made an impressive sight, even after such an eventful wet ride. The riders had all dismounted and prepared their sidecars for passengers. 6 of the rigs had simple vinyl covers over the compartment of the passenger seat. The 7th rig, the King, had a cover complete with side and rear windows. Riders could actually ride under the cover while the motorcycle was in operation. But no one ever did. It was too much fun to ride with the cover off. Once TJ's sidecar cover was removed, he looked into the torpedo-shaped body and the jet fighter-style swooped back windshield that created the cockpit where he would sit. He caught his own reflection in the jet black paint of the body. It reminded him of the time he was wheeling past a funhouse mirror. His reflection looked almost cartoon-like. The seat was deep inside the passenger compartment. The opening was big enough for 2 people to sit comfortably, unless you're a big fellow like me. TJ would need the extra room. Since he couldn't hold himself up, he needed to sit on a grown-up's lap. As he continued to marvel at the amazing machine before him, he didn't realize he was now surrounded by other riders. JD released the 2 chrome clips on each side of the cockpit, and the upper half of the nose of the sidecar body began to slowly rotate upward. TJ could hear the quiet hiss of 2 gas shocks controlling the opening. JD looked at TJ's face and could see the clear fascination with the strange machine. TJ's eyes widened. Whoa, cool. There in front of him was the now accessible seat and a black carpeted floor. All the obstacles of his ride were fading away. "What's your name, son?" JD asked, smiling. TJ responded with a whisper. "What was that?" JD asked again. "Oh, sorry. My name's TJ and I love this motorcycle. It's the coolest machine I ever saw." "Yeah, this is a pretty cool machine, TJ. My name's JD. You want to take a ride?" "Oh boy, could I?" "Want to bring a buddy with you? There's enough room in there for you and your best camp buddy." "Who's your buddy this week, TJ?" My buddy. Dave is my counselor buddy this week. He'll ride with me for sure." Dave had worked his way around the other riders and was now at TJ's side. "You've been waiting a long while for this moment, haven't you, buddy?" Dave said. "Dave, I can't believe it's finally happening." Dave knew the drill. Campers who couldn't ride alone needed a buddy to ride with them to be safe. Dave climbed into the sidecar seat first so TJ could be placed on his lap. In the meantime, 2 other riders carefully lifted TJ out of his wheelchair and into Dave's arms. Kids who live in wheelchairs all their lives become very accustomed to the safety of their chair provides. And even when the caregiver is a well-known family member, transfer from the chair to any other place can be frightening. TJ overcame his fear of being lifted by total strangers and being placed in Dave's lap. He carefully instructed the attentive riders exactly how they should hold him. Once in place, TJ's smile returned once again. The riders brought with them a number of helmets, as all campers by rule needed to wear one. Jack found a nice orange helmet and gently placed it on TJ's head. "Okay, TJ, you're all fastened in," Jack announced. Dave pulled the seatbelt over the both of them and clicked the two ends together. The two riders who loaded TJ into the sidecar then closed the uplifted nose and latched it into place. TJ's heart was pounding as the windshield closed over him. He was safely inside the sidecar now. JD turned the ignition switch on the bike to the on position and pressed the starter. The big motorcycle roared to life. The sound the bike made and the vibration of the engine created the feeling of movement even before the machine began rolling. He looked down to TJ and said, "Only one rule on this motorcycle today, and that's to have fun. You ready to roll?" "You bet, JD. Let's go." Chapter 15. Just before TJ began moving, he looked over to his right and saw the rest of cabin 22. Connor, Eddie, Sean, and Ethan, all in a bunch, had their thumbs high in the air, saluting the newest member of the Sidecar Kings as he rolled out for his inaugural ride. JD saw the salute and blew the horn on the big Harley in happy response, and finally got underway. "How you doing, TJ?" Dave asked in his ear. "Great, Dave. This is awesome." JD departed from the loading lane, took a left at the camp caretaker's house, and made his way down towards the damaged picnic pavilion. The camp crew had cleared all the camp paths of any limbs or objects that may have blown around by the storm, but JD took his time anyway. Along the path stood a large group of similarly dressed volunteers who had come to spend time with the kids. They stood along the path and clapped their hands and whistled as the first passenger of the day went by. They cheered for the kids and for the riders alike. JD continued past the pavilion, and they briefly viewed the tree that had dropped on the pavilion roof. He was quickly reminded of the fallen tree he and his friends had used for shelter on their journey over Eagle Mountain. "Wow," he said above the noise of the bike. "Looks like you guys got the same storm we did on our way here." TJ looked past JD and saw the splintered pavilion roof and the fallen tree. He was amazed the structure was still standing. "Good thing we weren't under there, huh, Dave? We would have been squashed like bugs." "For sure, buddy, for sure." As the sidecar rig continued on the path around the dining hall, JD had noticed the rec center double doors had been left open. He aimed his machine toward the doorway. For a moment, TJ was incredulous. He yelled up to JD, "You're not going in there, are you? We're not going to fit through." "Sure we will, buddy. Hold on tight." And they motored inside. The trio motored in circles around the inside of the rec center. As centrifugal force slowly pushed on the riders, Dave held on to TJ a little tighter. "Whoa, buddy, this is like riding in a roller coaster." TJ responded, "Woohoo! Faster, faster! Hey, Dave, we're riding inside." JD obliged simply by pulling in the clutch and revving the motor, making it seem like the machine was moving faster, when actually they were slowing down. After a couple of more tight turns inside the rec center and some ear-splitting throttle blast, JD headed for the exit and sunlight. "That was awesome! Let's do it again!" TJ was a constant smile. The sidecar made a right turn after leaving the rec center and continued on. The path now had become crowded with volunteers who had come after the storm and campers who were making their way to the sidecar loading zone. JD had to be careful how he navigated the bike. The trio came upon the cabins. Sitting on cabin 22's porch was bike rider Stretch and his wife Mel, with a camera and an instant printer. JD pulled the rig up to the cabin porch and stopped so TJ could have his picture taken. Just like the hundreds of riders before him, TJ beamed a real, genuine, heartfelt smile for the camera that was born from the soul of an amazing machine. Chapter 16. Here's a picture. Sidecar rider and a motorcycle rider sitting in front of cabin 22 getting their picture taken, just like all the other riders ever have. Chapter 16. JD, Dave, and TJ followed the camp path until it ended in the middle of a grassy area near the camp indoor pool. Again, TJ gasped as JD continued rolling past the end of the path and motored into the grass. JD pointed the machine towards the earthen bridge over a swale. The terrain became rougher as JD crossed the bridge and followed the suggestion of an old path through a meadow. He slowed the rig down to keep his passengers from getting too jostled about and to give them more time to take in the beautiful surroundings. TJ was now in the area of camp that he had not been with his wheelchair, and he watched as the local birds scattered and dove around the sidecar as it passed. The machine rumbled effortlessly through the grass. Dave held on to TJ and could feel the young boy's heart beating through his tiny rib cage. "You all right, buddy?" Dave asked his favorite camper of all time. "Yeah, I sure am. This is the best ever." JD looked down at the two smiling passengers as the Sidecar King performed its magic. He marveled at how the magic worked on each of its many passengers, and he couldn't help but smile himself. The meadow grew to the edge of a forest. The camp owners had paved a path into the woods so the kids could gain access with their wheelchairs. TJ recognized the path opening into the canopy of trees and said above the rumble of the engine, "I know where we are now. We came back here for a campfire the other night. It's spooky here in the nighttime." The path meandered in an imperfect circle around the inside of the forest. JD expertly navigated the path barely wide enough for the bike and the sidecar. He had ridden many times on this path during previous camp visits. He could see the darkened ground of the fire pit within the circle. He also noticed some fallen trees he hadn't seen on his last visit. He presumed the morning storm was the culprit. The sidecar followed the path until suddenly JD yanked the handlebars hard to the right, and the machine lurched into an overgrown opening. TJ was about to yell in protest until he saw JD had turned into a seldom-used trail that emptied the three out onto another meadow. The sidecar was headed toward a short but steep grassy mound. JD knew from previous experience the mound looked steeper and taller than it actually was, and he just needed to make sure he kept his speed up to crest the top. "Here comes the roller coaster ride again. TJ, hold on, buddy." TJ whooped as his stomach jumped along with the sidecar ascending the small grassy hill quickly. "That was fun. Let's do it again." TJ laughed out loud. After ascending the hill, the terrain flattened out and the camp parking lot came into view. JD aimed the sidecar through the cars parked in the lot and asked TJ if he was finished or if he wanted to go some more. "More. Go around again, can we, JD?" JD simply smiled and aimed the big rig out into the flat meadow. JD could see other sidecars riding through the camp now. Each time they passed another rig, everyone waved to each other. The three made their way back into the paved circle in the woods and then worked their way back to where they started. They passed the volunteers again and went into the rec center again. This time, 2 other sidecars were already inside, and JD, Dave, and TJ joined the others in a game of follow the leader, Harley style. 3 sidecars followed each other in a perfect circle inside the rec center. The sound of not 1, but 3 Harleys spinning inside of a building was deafening, but the campers didn't seem to mind. Then, as if on cue, the 3 bikes took turns heading out the door. JD pointed the sidecar back to the loading zone, knowing many more campers were waiting for their chance to ride. As they headed back, he told TJ what was going on. TJ, we're going back to give someone else a chance to ride. If you want and there's time at the end, you can go again, okay, buddy? As they slowed to a stop, TJ turned off the engine. 2 other waiting riders unlatched the hinged top of the sidecar and lifted away from TJ and Dave. Dave released his seatbelt and helped guide TJ's little body as the riders removed the younger passenger from the sidecar and placed him carefully back into his wheelchair. Thank you very, very much for taking me for a ride today, JD. That was awesome. It sure was, JD. Thank you a lot, Dave added. You guys are most welcome, JD replied. Believe me, I had as much fun as you did. Before JD could say anything more, another camper was getting ready to take a turn in the Sidecar King. And the magic was set to begin again. TJ waited patiently for almost 2 hours for his second ride, until all the other campers got their turn. After his first amazing ride, TJ would have waited twice as long to get another. He and Dave were JD's last ride of the day. After all campers had their fill, the riders came from the north, said their goodbyes, and headed back with another hefty helping of camp memories. Bear sublimely stated the obvious just before they left. We're taking the long way home, gang. We'll get home when we get home. One interesting Eagle Mountain crossing is enough for one day. The riders joined him in a great laugh, got their bikes underway, and left the camp in a massive display of sound and color, disappearing finally down the road they came in on. That night, the boys of Cabin 22 stayed up late, ate snacks, and talked about the memory-filled day. This time, another voice chimed in. TJ recounted his amazing rides with a smile that simply could not be outdone by his friends. TJ was now a full-fledged member of the Sidecar Kings. The coolest name for the coolest cabin in camp, maybe the coolest cabin ever. Dave simply listened to the magic of the ride and continued to work long, long into the night. Yes.